What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for episode 206, our Cincinnati preview and predictions. We're going to book in this episode with some Big 12 talk. Obviously, West Virginia was on a bye week last week, so no game to review, but we still got some scores from around the conference to talk about. We're going to recap the week 10, Big 12 scores, and then, of course, we will update the standings before we talk about the Cincinnati game, and then we'll wrap up with our week 11 picks around the Big 12. And joining me to help me do all of that, of course, my two great co-hosts. We've got Steven
What's going on, everybody?
and Bradley.
What up?
All right, gentlemen. So West Virginia coming back from a bye week, 4-4, 4 games left, trying to remain competitive here in what's been a crazy Big 12. And that's what we're going to talk about here at the beginning, is just this kind of upset week, I guess, in the Big 12, you could call it, that took place here in week 10. And we're going to talk about it with some of these scores really quickly to lead off this episode. Texas Tech taking down Iowa State, being one of those on the road in Ames, 23-22. Houston being another one at home, getting the upset win over Kansas State, 24-19. UCF dominates Arizona, 56-12. Oklahoma State still remains winless in conference, following Arizona State, 42-21. Baylor beats TCU 37-34 in Waco. Baylor continuing what's kind of been a hot streak for them as of late. They've seemed to turn things around there, but some crazy scores, some upsets this week in the Big 12. Gentlemen, what sticks out to you there as far as the scores or anything you want to talk about there from the Week 10 slate while West Virginia was on a bye week that happened?
I mean, obviously the two that jump out at you is Kansas State and Texas Tech, or Kansas State and Iowa State, sorry, losing their respective games. But with those two, and then, also want to point out Penn State losing to Ohio State, and then Pitt getting rolled by SMU, thankfully. And I want to also, I don't know if I want to put Brad on blast for this or not.
I would. I'd put Brad on blast for this.
All right.
Because
Our friend Bradley
took
over
my
here.
ass to the cleaner.
Yeah, he did. He did. But I think what's most important to remember here, Brad, is that's what you get whenever you start somebody that plays for the Pitt Panthers.
Oh, no.
Okay. He's a good quarterback, dude. He's been killing it all
He
year.
has been killing it. He has been killing it. And it took everything in me not to get him off the waiver wire, but I just couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And thankfully I didn't. But anyway.
Yeah,
but with those two, losing on top of Iowa State and Kansas State, that means every single team that West Virginia has lost to up to this point in the season lost all in the same weekend. So how ironic is that?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of like a double-edged sword where, that's something we could lean our hat on was the quality losses. And so as they lose, they look less quality. But then it's also propping up the teams ahead of us.
Weren't they all?
So.
Kansas State wasn't undefeated, but all of the rest of them, they were all undefeated up to that point, right?
Yep. And then they all lost this weekend.
Also, yep, crazy.
Yeah, it was a wild weekend in college football too. A lot of upsets around. I mean, Clemson got beat by Louisville. Unranked Louisville took down Clemson. A lot of crazy games.
Throwing stuff on the field. That was what's up with that this year. I hope that doesn't become a thing in Morgantown.
The ACC seems kind of up for grabs. I know Miami's still looking like the top dog, but they've been, close, had a few close calls. They were even down double digits in that game and had to come back. They've had some games they've had to survive. So it seems like a lot of the conferences this year have a lot more parity than we've had in recent years. And I think some of that's probably credit to, the transfer portal, NIL and all of that. Because you even look at a conference like the Big Ten where you would, expect it to be Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC. USC's having a bit of a down year, but you got Oregon and you got Indiana. You got to shout out Kurt Signetti, WVU grad, has Indiana with their best, start in school history in his first year there. So, just around college football, it's been a kind of a weird year with some different things going on, but I actually, I like to see it.
I like it too. I think Oregon, in my opinion, right now has been consistently the best team across the board. I think even Georgia and Alabama have shown signs of inconsistency, as talented as both teams are. Ohio State also. I know that they've been winning, but I just mean that they're a great team. I don't mean this that they're not a contender, but if I'm picking right now out of all the teams that I've seen, Oregon's been by far the best one.
Yeah, I think they're hands down number one right now.
Yeah, it's a good looking football team.
Yeah,
for sure.
and
But
Dylan Gabriel's going to be the next, I think, Jalen Hurts style quarterback in the National Football League.
I could see it, man. I like Gabriel a lot. He's got a great game there, but they definitely look like the top ranked team, nationally. I think that's, maybe inarguable at this point, but as far as the Big 12 and who their top ranked team is, it's also currently inarguable, but it has been a tumultuous season throughout the conference, as we just talked about, with both Iowa State and Kansas State losing in the same week, getting upset, if you want to call it that. But taking a look at our Big 12 standings here, pleasing to my co-host Steven's ears here to hear that BYU remains that team that's at the top of the conference, 8-0, 5-0 in the conference at number one. Second tie here, we have two teams at 4-1, those being Colorado and Iowa State. Colorado 6-2 overall, Iowa State 7-1. Kansas State drops to fourth in the conference now with their second conference loss. They're at 4-2 in the conference, and so is Texas Tech there to round out your top five teams. Then here in the middle, we have the logjam. The West Virginia is currently in, where they'll face another team in there in Cincinnati this coming week. That's the game we're going to preview here coming up momentarily. But you got Arizona State 3-2, Cincinnati 3-2, West Virginia 3-2 at 6, 7, and 8. And then 9 through 16, you have Baylor, TCU, Houston, UCF, Utah, Kansas, Arizona, and of course Oklahoma State, who currently remains winless in the conference. Guys, any thoughts on the conference standings? They sit currently now, 10 weeks through the college football season already. Hard to believe we've gotten here this fast, but kind of got a good picture of where things stand here with, the final 4 weeks of the regular season coming up. We can see how this shakes out in what's been a pretty crazy Big 12 race.
Yeah, I was gonna say even another edge to that sword. We needed those teams that we lost to lose for any chance of us to kind of like win out and get up there in the Big 12's
Yeah,
championship. Because I know it's an
Yeah,
absolutely miracle of a shot. It would have to be crazy. We've got to win every single game ahead of us to even make it happen. But it's a possibility, and so that's like, hey, it needed to happen if it's going to happen.
yeah. I mean, one thing to notice too is the standings, the current standings right now are almost a complete flip flop of what they were in the preseason.
true.
You had a lot of Oklahoma State in the very top. They're at the very, very bottom, including myself. I picked them to win the conference, and I don't really know what's went. So they've lost a lot of pieces due to injury. But that one's truly shocking. As much as good of a surprise as BYU has been this year, Oklahoma State has been the exact opposite. Um, but
Yeah, they're like
Colorado
Kansas. Like
also,
Kansas was
as
supposed to
hard
be
as
a great team coming into this
yeah, Kansas
season.
is Kansas kind of fell back, but I think that we were, including myself, including us on this podcast, everybody was kind of naive to think that they could continue what they had been doing over a long term when they lost as much. I mean, they kept a lot of their players from last season and what they've been, or from when they've been successful, but coaching wise, they lost, a good bit. So it's hard to continue to do what you're doing at a school, at a football program anyway, like that.
True. True.
Colorado, though, as hard as we were on them, they have been proving everybody wrong every single week.
Yeah, myself included on that one. I
Yeah,
think that's
same
what
here.
stands out to me is some surprises like Colorado and BYU, and then some surprises on the other end of the spectrum, like you said, like Oklahoma State, maybe Kansas, if you want to call it that. But I think if you're a West Virginia fan, as Brad stated, and I'm sure all of you that are tuning in here are, of course, you really need to, root against Iowa State, against Colorado, and against
As
Kansas
hard
State,
as that is.
specifically Iowa State and Kansas State, because Kansas State now has two conference losses. You need West Virginia to win out, and you need Kansas State to lose one more conference game, and you need Iowa State to lose two more conference games for West Virginia to have a chance to get into that Big 12 title game, which I'm sure is the team's aspirations and what we'd all love to see. But West Virginia has to do their part and went out to get there. But in a crazy Big 12, there very well could be a team with two conference losses in there. West Virginia currently has two conference losses. They just got to keep it that way and not add any more in these final four games, starting with this upcoming game against Cincinnati, which dovetails us into our preview for this game. We're going to get into our Cincinnati preview and our predictions. We'll provide our key to victory and our score predictions at the end. But just to get it started here, gentlemen, haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about this too much, obviously. Talked about it a little bit in the bye week episode there that I did solo, but West Virginia, moving on from Jordan Leslie, at least showing that they're willing to do something to try and change things and try and bring some more success to the program after how bad the defense has been. As I talked about on that podcast episode, lowest coverage grade in the country according to PFF, by far lowest in the conference as well. Our coverage grade is like a 38 as a team. Every other team in the conference like 50 plus. So obviously had to make a change there. Get rid of Jordan Leslie and promote Jeff Kuntz. Any thoughts there on that coaching move? And then I want to get a little injury update before we dive into the matchup specifically in this game against Cincinnati.
I think that that coaching move to me was more of a Ren Baker decision than a Neil Brown decision. So I'm curious to see what that is moving forward. Is that going to be the start of a domino effect, or can West Virginia win 4 games, in a row and finish the season 8-4 and kind of look optimistic again, kind of how you did last year? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks still that remain for me with that whole entire situation. I've obviously been in favor of getting rid of Jordan Leslie for the reasons you all just mentioned.
Yeah, better late than never is kind of how I feel about it.
Exactly. But I don't know.
That's
I'm curious to see if it's enough, and it's positive coming off of a win like that, out in Arizona. So I don't know. West Virginia just seems to me, as ironic as it is, seems to be playing better on the road than at home this year, and that's, I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
Turn that around. It is.
Yeah, I also could have just got lucky with the people that you played away, but no, I think that this was
True.
fully Neil Brown. I think that this was his decision through and through. I think that Ren Baker has no real need to step in and force it, because he can just really clean the whole coaching staff if he wanted to. So I think that this was Neil Brown trying to save his job. I think this was him showing that he's willing to make a move. I think that doing it in the middle of the season is really telling of the kind of pressure that he's under.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly telling to not have Shotton Brown step up. I think that he's looking for somebody that's a little bit more capable. And maybe that move in the middle of the season of moving Jordan Leslie up and letting Shotton Brown, sit down on the field may have even been his attempt at seeing what he could do, honestly.
True.
At this point, and it didn't fix it. So I think he knows that it's got to get fixed, and I think that he'll probably keep that coaching staff together, but I expect that there will be more changes in the offseason. But I think that it was good. I think that we should have done it. I think that it needed to be done, some freshness, some kind of move, something we've not seen Neil Brown do. So I think he's showing a willingness to come out and change it. And he said it throughout the season in his post-game conferences. He called it out. Can't keep doing what we're doing. What we got's got to is what we got. We can't do anything different. If I can't change my guys on the field, I've got to change something else.
Yeah.
And so to see him finally pull the trigger on that, I think shows some of his development in his career. So Jeff Kuntz, think the world, having been a great recruiter, has done awesome on special teams. Special teams have looked crisp this year, so I trust him and what he's got going on, and I think that reducing it down and probably even just taking that moment to break those barriers and rebuild up their communication to just be like, okay, throw it out. This is our defense. This is how we're going to start communicating it. Will probably make it better because you're just going to have to dummy it down, and that will help your communication. Get back to that bend don't break mentality, and maybe we can just get a few more turnovers, few less blown coverages, and that can probably win us a few games going down the end of the season. So
yeah,
I
agree.
I think it's good.
And I think definitely, like as you said, it definitely shows, I think as well, that Neil Brown senses the temperature, turning up on his seat a little bit because, doing a move like this because, really I've heard, a lot of people say that they don't ever remember West Virginia making a midseason staff change like this. We've talked in the past about how West Virginia doesn't fire coaches, midseason, talking head coaches, but even as far as midseason, major staff changes to either coordinator, no one really remembered one in the last, 40 or 50 years. So kind of an unprecedented move for West Virginia, but hopefully it pays off. And I think, at least has a chance to, we'll see what happens down the line. But if nothing else, I think, you have the element of surprise here for this game against Cincinnati because they don't know what you're going to adjust, how much you're going to change things, what are you going to do differently, how different is Jeff Kuhn's going to call a game as opposed to how Jordan Leslie does. So it's going to require a lot of adjustment on their part, at least for this week. And hopefully, maybe we catch them off guard and that helps us with this game. But hopefully we can have continued and sustained success moving forward. Because as you mentioned, Brad, I think that in the offseason there are going to be other moves on the defensive side. We should have to figure out what those are going to be. And I think in a lot of ways, these final 4 games are going to help decide that, both for maybe Jeff Kuntz, who could be auditioning to maybe get this role full time if he does a good job, and also another guy you mentioned, Shadon Brown, who's probably got his job status up in the air in a major way right now with how the weak part has been the secondary after he's been the coach of the entire secondary. West Virginia elected not to hire another coach there for that back end, so a lot of it's going to fall on him as well. West Virginia obviously couldn't afford to do both coaches mid-season, really, but definitely maybe this is his chance too in these final 4 games to show that he wasn't a part of the problem, or if he was or not, and then they make that move at the end of the season. But I definitely, as you said, think there will be more coming at the end of the season, and we'll see what happens. But for now, we've got Jeff Kuntz as interim defensive coordinator for the Mountaineers for this game against Cincinnati, and let's dive into that game now, gentlemen, talk a little bit about it. Mountaineers hit the road coming up Saturday, November 9th, noon kick on Fox Sports 1. West Virginia coming in at 4-4 overall, 3-2 in the conference. And Cincinnati, as we mentioned, they're going through the standings, also 3-2 in the conference, but they're 5-3 on the season. So Neil Brown facing a team with a winning record here has a chance to, maybe beat one of those. We'll see what happens in the game, which will be the 22nd meeting all time. WVU 17-3. There has been one tie in the series. West Virginia won 42-21 last year in their first meeting as Big 12 foes after being previous Big East rivals in the past. Head coach Scott Satterfield there at Cincinnati in his second season. Just kind of a brief overview there, gentlemen. Before we get into diving into each side of the ball, just kind of opening thoughts on this matchup. Anything you want to get off your chest here heading into it before we talk more about the nitty-gritty details?
But I think one thing that you just mentioned that would be a positive if we could get a win out there. Would it's a winning program. They've got a winning record, so this would be, obviously they're not up in the top of the league right now, but even still, this would be kind of I don't want to say a statement win.
It's a
But if you
necessary
can
win,
win
though, if
this
you
way, it
want to
gives you
climb
hope
over the
going into the
peak
last
line.
3 games. But I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's West Virginia football, so it's always the tale of 2 teams. What team's going to show up and play on that that Saturday?
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of that, that's a good segue because I completely forgot and wanted to mention there in the opening. And then, Brad, I'll let you share some thoughts too. Of course, didn't mean to cut you guys off. But as you said, which team's heading into there as far as players that'll be heading into the game. Sounds like we'll probably be without Garrett Green again.
Yep.
Neil Brown said in his Monday press conference he's doubtful. Also on the defensive side, still going to be without Aiden Garnes at corner and without Aubrey Burks at the spear position, and Jaden Bray still out on offense. But Wyatt Milam will return. C.J. Donaldson healthy and ready to go as far as an injury update. Is where we're at kind of personnel-wise for the Mountaineers coming off the bye week. But, Brad, what are your kind of thoughts here just opening into going into this game to take on Cincinnati?
Yeah, like Steve was saying, you're beating a team that has a positive winning record, and this is somebody that you need to beat to improve yourself in the Big 12 rankings. I think finally, for the first time, um, it's a good team that we're playing that doesn't seem at the point unbeatable because Kansas State lost, Iowa State lost, but when we played both those teams, man, they were playing some of the best ball I think they've played all season. That's when they were really flexing that muscle and really rolling. So I think that you've got a team to really kind of step up there and prove your chance. You're not going out too far for an away game this time. They're actually driving up, flying back, which is an interesting little thing that they're doing. But an absolute big game, though. Getting your guys ready. Uh, Coming back home to Morgantown after this would be huge for Neil Brown to come back with 2 straight wins to say, hey, see, I said it'd be a good thing to get away from home for a couple weeks. Win a couple games usually helps during that time. Yeah, I think that that's incredibly important. So I agree with Neil Brown that I think that the our whole entire season is going to be really kind of started on Saturday.
Yeah. I think that's one thing we're all three in agreement on, it sounds like, with this one, is that it's very crucial and critical. The West Virginia find a way to win, probably 75% of these Final Four games, I'd say. Fans want to see at least that, but we really would love to see the Mountaineers win out, and getting off on the right foot with that and getting a win on the road would be a great start against, one of the better teams that West Virginia plays out of these Final Four. And also, when you look at these Final Four teams, a good majority of them do a good job passing the football, and that's one thing that Cincinnati does a good job of. So we're going to get a good look at Jeff Kuntz as the new coordinator in West Virginia's passing defense and see if there's been any changes and improvements there in this game, which leads us into the first matchup we're going to talk about here, guys. The Cincinnati offense against the West Virginia defense. Just kind of a brief overview here of the Cincinnati offense. Their offensive coordinator's Brad Glenn in his second season there. They're currently third in the Big 12 in total yards per game at 439. They also have the third highest team offensive grade, according to PFF, with an 81 offensive grade. Quarterback Brendan Sorsby's been very good for them after transferring in from Indiana. He's third in the conference with 264 passing yards per game. He's thrown for over 2,100 yards in the season and has 15 touchdowns compared to only 4 interceptions. And he also leads the team in rushing touchdowns with 6 on the season, so can hurt you with his legs a little bit as well, as can both of the Cincinnati running backs. They do have a good rushing attack there that Scott Satterfield likes to run that wide zone scheme, and they do a good job of it with Corey Kiner, who we know about, and yet again is having another good season, over 700 yards rushing, averaging over 5 yards per carry. But the other running back, Evan Pryor, seems to be super explosive. He's averaging over 9 yards per carry on the year, guys, and has 5 rushing touchdowns of his own. And then, of course, when they do go to the air, 2 big passing targets you got to worry about. The receiver, Xavier Henderson. We faced him last year. He was a good player then. Continued that this year, 552 yards and 4 touchdowns. But the biggest addition to their offense, I think, if it's not Sorsby at quarterback, it's at tight end Joe Royer, transferred in from Ohio State. And he's been a big difference maker for him. Yes, he's a tight end, but he's also their second leading receiver, 438 yards and 3 touchdowns on the season. And don't sleep on his speed. Despite being a tight end, he can make some plays there. So some faces to know and some things to know there about the Cincinnati offense. But what are kind of your thoughts on this matchup as we get ready to head into it with a new defensive coordinator in tow and get to see Jeff Kuntz lead this West Virginia defense against what's been a pretty good Cincinnati offense within the conference this year, Stephen?
I can't help but be nervous about it, especially with how good their offense has been throughout this point in the season. And West Virginia really doesn't handle, whenever offenses use tight ends a lot, West Virginia usually doesn't handle that well. So that kind of scares me. But I'm interested to see how this defense does under Jeff Kuntz. And I'm kind of optimistic about it because they've played well at times. There's been, spots of brightness within this season for the defense. When they played Oklahoma State, I know that Oklahoma State's done really bad this year, but they played really good defense out there. I thought for the most part they played good defense at Arizona. So I don't know. It's just depending on how the defense looks with Jeff Kuntz at the helm of it.
Yeah, I think
do they get better or do they get worse?
Just need to improve those little things that they've been, doing a bad job of getting off the field on third down, doing a bad job in the red zone, things like that. Even if you can just improve those a little bit in these Final Four games, it's going to make a difference. And I'm hoping that maybe just bringing in a new coordinator maybe changes the mentality a little bit, and that can just, help give you that little bit extra that you need. What's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? It's a little bit extra, so you never know what can happen when you change something up at the helm like that. Hopefully it pays off. But Brad, what are your thoughts, man, heading into this one? This Cincinnati offense been good this season. West Virginia making a change on defense, hoping it pays off. We'll find out what happens with both these teams coming off a bye week. But what are your thoughts as we head into it?
Yeah, big question marks everywhere. I think we know what to expect from Cincinnati. They would be dumb if they didn't come in and try to throw the ball 40 times, especially if you already got one of the better throwing quarterbacks in the Big 12. Yeah. That should be your memo from day one. I do think that our defense is going to I think they're going to rely on the front. That's where it's been our bread and butter this year. That's where we've been the strongest at. So I expect us to still try to stay complex up front, keep them guessing where the pressure is coming from, and try to cover up that back end. I think that back end, like I said, I think that we're going to dumb it down, make it real easy. So looking at it, improvements. We can, still take shots in the zone coverage if that's how we get beat. That's how we get beat. That seems to be our strategy. So I don't think that we're going to vary from that. Um, and so for me, I'm looking at what does the communication look like? Blown plays, right? Do we have continually blown assignments? If that's not remedy, then there's still an issue, right? Something else is still happening that's not um, right. You know,
Yeah.
player communication. You could see the players getting frustrated all the time, yelling, "Come on, man, hurry the F up!" You can see the players yelling it on TV. You know what I mean? Like you can see the lack of communication. So that's what I'm going to be looking for in our defense. We're going to build that bend don't break. So I don't expect us to come in and shut them down. But I want to see us communicate better. If I think that we can communicate better, then I think that our chances of winning games going forward are going to get exponentially better.
That's a great point as well. Just goes along with what we mentioned there about the little things and trying to improve those. And that's just something simple, but it's been a big issue this season, throughout the season, even getting into here late in the year up until the final game that Jordan Leslie called as defensive coordinator. You had it happen a couple of times. You just can't have it happen, especially at this point in the year in a critical time as we hit the month of November. So we'll see what happens. Jeff Kuntz leads the West Virginia defense in his first game as defensive coordinator, which it's just interesting because we have some aspects of that in this game of guys facing teams that they're familiar with. Obviously, West Virginia and Cincinnati familiar with each other from the Big East days. But Jeff Kuntz, the last time he held a defensive coordinator title was when he was at Cincinnati back in 2016 as co-defensive coordinator. Also, the last time he called plays for a defense, and first time he'll be doing it at WVU is against Cincinnati. And as we flip it over and talk about the other side of the football, there are some similarities there that we can talk about as well with some of the personnel on Cincinnati's side, which I'll get into here in the overview as we dive in now into the West Virginia offense versus the Cincinnati defense, which does have a new defensive coordinator in Tyson Veit. They brought in the offseason, coming over from Iowa State, where he'd been their linebackers coach for a long time. So they're running now a similar defense to what Iowa State runs with the 3 down linemen, the 3 safety look. Iowa State and Kansas State both kind of run that, and we'll see it again here now with Cincinnati running something similar that they brought in Tyson Veit. They lead the Big 12 in forced fumble and fumble recoveries. Just interesting stat there. 11 forced fumbles on the season. They've recovered 8 of them, but they're tied for last with West Virginia in the conference in interceptions. So they forced turnovers more than West Virginia because they have recovered some fumbles, but they haven't got a lot of picks on the season. Maybe good news for Nico Marchio and the West Virginia offense there. But now we're going to talk about some of that personnel I was talking about that is familiar with West Virginia, much like these two programs being familiar with one another. And one of those guys, Jared Bartlett, obviously former West Virginia Mountaineer, has had a good run there at Cincy this season. He's currently 3rd in the Big 12 in sacks with 5.5 on the year and 4th in the conference in tackles for loss with 8. He's currently 2nd on Cincinnati's team with 42 total tackles on the season. But it doesn't end there. Their defensive back that leads them in interceptions on the year is Josh Minkins with 2, and he originally had committed to WVU. You can find on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel a video I did throughout the offseason where he had committed to WVU out of the portal, and then I think back in January decided to decommit, ends up at Cincinnati, and he currently leads them in interceptions. So 2 players, one formerly played for WVU, one nearly played for WVU, just going along with the familiarity storyline in this game. And then, of course, you can't talk about the Cincinnati defense and not mention the godfather there on the defensive line, Dante Corleone. 5 TFLs and 3 sacks on the year, always a force there on the Cincinnati defense. So new man at the helm for them on the season for Cincinnati. We mentioned West Virginia having a defensive coordinator for this game. Cincy in their first year under Tyson Veit. New system, but it's one West Virginia has faced a couple of times now. They didn't have great success against Kansas State or Iowa State, but hopefully the third time's the charm. Looks like it's going to be Nico Marchio at the helm. We get Wyatt Milam back there at the left tackle spot, and we'll see what West Virginia can do. The offense has been a bit of a mixed bag at points this season, but for the most part against Arizona, I liked what they did. I liked the game plan, and I liked Nico Marchio's performance. So you got to hope now coming off a bye week, you got a chance to not only replicate that, but hopefully outperform that. What are your thoughts here as West Virginia's offense gets set to take on this Cincinnati defense with Nico Marchio making a second consecutive start, it looks like, Stephen?
I'm excited to see Nico again. I love GG, and I'm not one of these people that has been harping on him. But with that being said, I've really loved what I've seen out of Nico so far this season. He's been great in the passing game. He doesn't scramble too much, but knows when to scramble. Gets positive yardage most of the time when he does decide to improvise on plays like that. So I'm excited. I don't think that the offense regresses at all under Nico Marchiol. But with that being said, um, they've got a tough task against a defense that's played this well throughout the year. Cincinnati really should be. They should have a better record. That's kind of surprising because a lot of, again, speaking about the polls earlier, it's a lot of people, including myself, didn't think that they were going to be that good this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think West Virginia, especially with CJ being healthy, you said Nick Malone's going to be playing again, right? Because Nick Malone was out last game, right?
Wyatt
Was it Wyatt Milan?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay, well, even better. You get Wyatt Milan back. I think that's positive for your offensive running game. Anyway,
usually helps getting the
definitely
probable first round pick back.
yeah,
for sure. Going to need that run game for Nico as well to help him, to lean on when he needs to, but also to set up some of those deep shots that we saw us hit again against Arizona, which was something I was excited to see come back. West Virginia go play action, hit a deep bomb to Traylon Ray, and Nico seemed to be pretty on target that game. Hopefully he is. Yet again, we'll need another good performance from him and from the West Virginia offense in general, I think, if we want to find a way to win this football game, because, despite the changes on the West Virginia defensive staff and the improvements they're hoping to make, we can only, expect Cincinnati to still move the ball and score some points. So West Virginia is going to need to do the same in this game indeed, Brad. What are your thoughts on how they'll be able to perform in that aspect going up against this Cincinnati defense?
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Nico play again, to see how he comes out, and if he can keep some of that consistency going of looking that good for 2 games in a row. So that's going to be really pumped up. I think we got a chance here. I think we got some, Cincinnati's got some players. Interesting to hear that Jared Bartlett's still doing incredibly well over there, pressuring the quarterbacks. Definitely don't want to see him get a sack on his previous home.
Yeah.
But I think we got a chance here. I think that our offense has got the weapons to compete with anybody in the country, If Nico can continue to spread the ball out, get the tight ends involved, I think that we've got a great chance if we can play some good complementary football with our defense. So, really, to me, though, I think that if Nico comes out and wins this game, I don't know how you turn around and start Garrett Green after that, especially if he plays well. I really thought that if Garrett Green was healthy for this game, I think that he would be starting Garrett. I don't think that he would be giving his starting position away until Garrett came in and played worse enough that he would have to put in Nico. But having played Nico for 2 straight games, I'm curious how that might affect it if Nico comes out and wins.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to build momentum to, try and potentially win 3 or 4, whatever you're trying to do here at the end or whatever you're able to do. I think you'd be crazy to try and break up what momentum you have. If you got a quarterback that's playing well, you got 2 games, you've won in a row. And plus that also would put, more into your corner as far as potentially coming back for next year if you're Neil Brown, because you can say, hey,
right.
Got Nico in, we won out. That would be more in his corner as well. So, I would be hard pressed to see it happen if Nico comes out, performs well, and West Virginia finds a way to win. But definitely do wish Garrett the best. Know he's dealing with a lot now. I know there's been some rumors about him maybe potentially not being able to return for the end of the season. Would hate to hear that, because even if he doesn't come back a starter, I'd like to see him make some plays in this offense, and we could use some of his playmaking ability in the final 4 games. But as far as this one's concerned against Cincinnati, guys, any final thoughts about the WVU offense against the Cincinnati defense before we talk key to victory and, of course, make our prediction?
That's all I got. I do want to add that I don't know, hope the best for GG, even if it is. It'd be kind of crazy if he's already played his last game in a uniform, but a gold and blue uniform anyway. Hope not.
For sure. Hopefully he's all right. Wish him the best, and hopefully has a positive turnout to the season, just like we hope the Mountaineers do, and like we hope the Mountaineers do in this game as well. Need a win here on the road against Cincinnati, a team with a winning record, haven't performed the best against those in the Neil Brown era. So here's a chance to, right that ship and get a win against one of those on the road in what is, an important game in the Big 12 Conference as we laid out the standings there. The Mountaineers still right there in the middle, tied with a bunch of teams there in a log jam, trying to make their way up into the top part of that conference. This win would go a long way in West Virginia being able to achieve that. But in order for them to accomplish that win, they're going to have to, do those key little things to help them pull off that victory. It's that time. Let's talk about our keys to victory in this one. Brad, what do you got as your key for a West Virginia football victory in this game against Cincinnati?
Yeah, it's all. I think it's going to come down to big plays. Can we continue to keep that going? I think that's what won us in the last game. I think that's what's going to win us this game, and it's what's going to keep us from losing this game. So if Nico Markell can come out and get some big plays with his arms, or Jaheim White can come out and get some big plays with his legs, or C.J. Donaldson, whoever it may be, and then if our defense can not let any laps happen and let big plays happen, then I think that we've got a great chance to come out and play some good quality football, come away with the win. So big plays.
I like it. I like it. That's for sure something that we got to do, man. We got to limit those and we got to make those. So I like that key to victory there of big plays for the Mountaineers in this game against Cincinnati. Steven, what about you, man? Key to victory for WVU in this one?
I think you mentioned it earlier with with how this defense is done with forcing fumbles and recovering those fumbles. I think if West Virginia takes care of the football, they got a good chance of winning this game. I think the offense has played well to the point that we can score points. So if you can just protect the football and score whenever you get in the red zone, I think you got a good shot of winning.
For sure. Always got to try and win that turnover battle, man. It's crucial, especially with as small as the margins are in the Big 12 this year. It seems like anybody can beat anybody, and you got to do those little things right. So that's a major key for me. My key to victory in this one, I talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Jeff Kuntz and this West Virginia defense. And I think for me, the key is what has been the struggle areas for West Virginia this year: red zone defense and third down defense. Those are going to be the areas I'm keeping an eye on in this football game, seeing if West Virginia can perform a little bit better in those areas. WVU's done a good job. They've got a good run defense this year. They've got stops on first down. They've gotten TFLs. They've gotten sacks. And they've gotten opponents into third and longs a lot this season. The only problem is West Virginia's pass defense is so bad. You get somebody into third and 15, third and 20, and then they drop back and throw it on you, pick up 25, 30 yards. Seems to have been the case all year. West Virginia's done a bad job of getting off the field on third down, so I think that's going to be a key in this football game. And then, of course, the red zone, always a critical area in these Big 12 matchups. So red zone defense and third down defense for me for my keys to victory. As we talk about our keys there, that leads us right into, of course, the favorite segment here on these preview and prediction shows, and that is the latter portion of those. Our score predictions for this game, West Virginia and Cincinnati, both at 3-2 in the conference. Cincinnati at 5-3 overall. West Virginia at 4-4. Both these teams coming off of bye weeks, looking for a hot start to what they're looking to be a strong close to the season, as both these teams trying to remain competitive in this crazy Big 12 conference. But how do we think it's going to shake out this Saturday at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati? Noon kick on FS1. Steven, what's your prediction for Saturday?
I really want to pick West Virginia in this game, but I don't know. You know what? I'm going to pick West Virginia.
Hey.
I've been flopping back and forth
For
the last couple of days, and I don't know. I feel confident, and then I don't. But I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt because they played well on the road this year, and they played well coming out of the first bye week earlier in the season whenever they beat Oklahoma State. So hopefully they can do it again. I'll pick West Virginia 38-35.
There we go. There's some positivity. That's something we've been needing right there, is a little bit of that. I feel like I've been lacking in that myself here on the show for a few weeks now. It's been a while since I picked a West Virginia win, and as I broke this game down, it certainly looks like one that I think West Virginia can win. And like Steven said there, I was going back and forth myself on what I thought my prediction would be. I had all my notes filled out and just had the prediction part blank and kept thinking about it and coming back to it. And what I ultimately landed on, that was kind of the reasoning I made the prediction that I made, is because I think, as I look at it and I'm, looking at it with my gold and blue glasses with my heart, like I said, I think West Virginia can win this football game. But to me, it just goes back to one of those things that we always talk about here. It's like it's very hard for me to pick you to do something until I see you do it. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to just go in with that blind faith. And we've talked a lot about Neil Brown struggling against winning teams with winning records. So that goes into this pick for me here. And then also West Virginia has made some changes, but also it's not like you're going to uproot everything on the defensive side until I see us play better red zone defense and better third down defense. As I mentioned in my key to victory, it's hard for me to think that we're going to do it. So maybe if they come out and they do it this week against Cincinnati, against a team that's good, a team with a winning record, it can change my predictions and give me a little more positive moving forward in this back half of the season. Because for now, unfortunately, I'm still a little bit pessimistic about this one. Cincinnati's offense worries me despite West Virginia's defensive changes. And I think Cincinnati's going to find a way to outlast us in the end. I've got Cincinnati 31, West Virginia 27. Unfortunately, that's Steven. That's me. Brad, round us out here. What's your score prediction for Saturday as the Mountaineers take on the Bearcats?
Yeah, no, fellas, I'm feeling it. Yeah, no, I'm feeling it. I like Jeff Kuntz taking over the defense. I think that uncomplicating it's the best thing we can do. Um, I think that you've got the most probably motivated Mountaineer team that we may have seen all year. I think that seeing somebody lose their job brings a level of seriousness to this that may have not been there beforehand. Um, I think Mountaineers come out and get it done. I think it's 35-21 good guys.
Hey, I like it. All
All right.
right. Hey, you guys got the golden blue glasses this week. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And the thing is, I'm right there with you guys as far as I kind of have like something inside of me, just like a little quiet, good
No,
feeling
you
about
picked
it.
them to lose, Cruz. No, you
Yeah,
picked
shut
them to
up,
I
Cruz.
lose.
am positive. I'm
Don't you
positive about it.
even try to turn around and say, "Oh, but
But I have
I
a good
think we're gonna
feeling. I do
win.
have
I
a good
still
feeling.
feel it."
I do have a good
Shut up.
feeling, but it's
No.
just knowing that Cincinnati is a team with a winning record. They're a team that actually kind of seems like a good team right now, and we haven't really beaten any good teams yet this year. So it's like I got to see us do it first. But I do have that
No
quiet good
doubt.
feeling about this game, despite my pick.
I think Cincinnati's a 6-6 team. Is
Yeah,
what it is.
maybe so. That could be the case in the end as well. It's possible.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: if they beat us, they will not end up 6-6. If we lose, if they lose to us, then I think they end up 6-6. As sad as that is to say, but
That's what I'm saying. I think we beat them because they're a 6-6 team.
I hope they get at least 7-5 at the end of the year, so we can still say we beat a team with a winning record if we do come out on top, like you guys are
a
predicting.
team.
Yeah,
Texas Tech's coming up.
18 at least. We got a couple here in the back half of the season, though. As Brad mentioned, Texas Tech still coming up here to close the year. They're looking hot right
Yeah.
now. We'll see what happens with
Hey,
them.
Baylor's
shout
With
out to
coming
you,
good.
Cruz, on that one too, because earlier in the year, whenever they were, they gave up 51 points to Abilene
yeah,
Christian, I believe it
Abilene
was,
Christian.
and
Yeah,
you said, well, they'll probably have it figured out by the time they play us, and by God, do they not
yeah. Look like
have
a
it
completely
figured out
different
now?
team right now.
Yeah,
Completely different team right now. It's going to be interesting to see how things end up here in these final few weeks in the conference, which brings us to our final segment, guys. Around the Big 12, like I said, we're going to bookend it with the Big 12 talk. We opened it with the recap of Week 10. Now we got to get into our preview of Week 11. We're going to make our picks for the games going on around the conference here. Now that we've previewed the Mountaineer game and made our picks, like we said, it'll be at noon on Fox Sports 1 there, the only noon game in the conference this week. But then we move on to 3:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1, Iowa State at Kansas. Kansas, man, been so unlucky this year. They've been in almost every game that they've played, just haven't been able to find a way to win. Iowa State coming off an upset loss, so going to be interesting to see what happens here. The Cyclones hit the road to take on the Jayhawks. Who do you like in this one, Brad?
Yeah, give me the Jayhawks, man. This is the next one that's happening.
Hey,
Iowa State trips up and fumbles. Kansas finally gets over that hump for the year and gets a good quality win at home.
hey, you know what? I could see it. And well, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to pick it too. I'm going to go with Kansas as well. We need it. If West Virginia wants to have a chance here, hopefully West Virginia has to take care of their own business at noon first. But if they do, then we can all turn this game on at 3:30 and root for the Jayhawks, and maybe picking them here gives us some good juju going into that game, and West Virginia is able to not only find a way to win themselves, but maybe have some things go their way. Let's go Jayhawks. I'm going to pick Kansas as well to pull the upset. Steven, what about you?
unfortunately, I got to disagree with you guys. I got Iowa State coming off of a loss like they just had this past weekend. As much as I'm going to be rooting for Kansas in this matchup, I think Rocco Becht is just too tough of a task for that Kansas defense to handle. I'm going to pick the Cyclones.
Yeah, don't blame me there. Iowa State certainly looks like the better team all season. As we move on here, next game here is going to be our game of the week, so we will come back to that one. But let's talk about UCF hitting the road to go play Tempe there at Arizona State, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. UCF has kind of righted the ship after, those midseason woes. Arizona State, hanging right there in the middle portion of that conference where WVU is after, dominating win over Oklahoma State. They have the home field advantage in this one against UCF, but who do you think gets the win there on ESPN2 in that night kick at 7 Eastern, Stephen?
I like the way that Cam Scadabow's playing. Obviously, he's on my fantasy team, so I'm a great fan of him. But he, and seriously has been playing on another level this season, and Arizona State's been looking pretty good as of late. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick the Sun Devils.
All right. I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit, man. They have looked good this season. They've got some good wins. Playing at home's probably going to be good advantage for them in this one. But you know what? I think that I'm going to go with UCF, man. They've found a way to get it done. They've played several quarterbacks this year. They were down to, Dylan Risk, I think, played this past week for them, and they still blew out Arizona. I think they make it 2 wins in a row over Arizona schools. Plus, I think I've got a theme going here where I'm rooting against teams that, getting losses would help West Virginia, and Arizona
Yeah,
State getting
yeah,
a third
not
conference
a bad
loss would
way.
help the Mountaineers as well. So I'm going
Not
to
a
go with
bad way to do
UCF.
it.
That's right. That's right. Try and be a little superstitious or speaking into existence, manifest destiny, something. Hopefully it pays off. But Brad, what about you in this one?
Yeah, I've liked UCF a lot this year, but this one I like Arizona State a little bit better at home. I think that they've just been an underdog story this year in the Big 12, have come through and really shown bright, played higher than they've been expected, and I think they're going to get one at home at night.
All right. I don't blame you. I like Kenny Dillingham, what he's doing there at Arizona State. They're definitely surprised and impressive this year. So we'll see if they're able to keep that going at home this weekend here in week 11. And then we have Oklahoma State at TCU, 7 o'clock Eastern kick. This one will be on Fox Sports 1. Guys, I'm leading this one off because time and time again, I've come on here in our Around the Big 12 segment, and each week I've said, this is going to be the week. Mike Gundy, you can't ever count Gundy out. And Oklahoma State lets me down. And they let me down. And they let me down. They come so close, and then they let me down. And so I'm giving up, throwing in the white towel, throwing in the towel, whatever you want to call it, waving the white flag. I can't do it anymore. I got to go TCU. They're going to get the win at home. I'm sorry. This will probably be the time Oklahoma State finally does it the week I don't pick them, but I'm going TCU in this one. Now, what about you, Brad?
Yeah, I was going to say slam $50 on Oklahoma State this weekend. Um, the
The
second
Cruise
Jordan said
Jinx.
he flew in the white flag, Gundy said, I'm winning. So, yeah, I think Oklahoma State gets it done this weekend in Fort Worth. I think this is the one that they come out and they win, that they have no right winning, floundering right now. But for some reason, Mike Gundy's going to do it just to prove Jordan wrong. So, give me Oklahoma State.
Hey,
Hey,
he took it from me, man. That's what I was gonna
you
go
can say the
for it as
same thing.
well.
Hey, my
Yeah,
luck and my betting history would both agree with you guys that you're probably right. This will probably be the week. Steven, you taking Oklahoma
comedic
State as well?
for purely comedic purposes. Give me Oklahoma State Cowboys.
Hey, we'll see what happens. Got to keep a close eye on that one to see the final result, just for that little bit of fun there on this episode. But then, speaking of a bit of fun, always a lot of fun. We got the Holy War as the nightcap this week in the Big 12 here for Week 11. BYU and Utah playing in Salt Lake. Utah was the home team. Stay up late for this one, 10:15 Eastern kick on ESPN, but Utah wants nothing more than to, end BYU's perfect season with how this rivalry goes. That would be, they're having a bad year, but maybe that would give them at least one victory. It could be like their Super Bowl. So I know BYU is definitely the prohibitive favorite, but you can never count out the opponent in these rivalry games. You never know what could happen. But having said all that, I say all that to still say, give me the Cougars. This is a pro Cougar podcast, as we've established since the beginning of the year. And BYU has, definitely made that come to fruition and definitely, looked like probably the most improved team in the conference. I think it'd be, inarguable at this point to say that they're not. And I think they keep that win streak alive. They remain unbeaten. They find a way to get it done at Utah in what's probably a closer game than expected, but BYU gets the win. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I don't think it's closer than expected. I think BYU walks through Utah and slams them down.
Of course. Steven, I don't even need to ask probably, but who do
Nope.
you got in this one?
No, you guys know who I'm picking. I'm not picking against BYU, especially against
The Utah school?
the overrated team that they're playing against to try to join a conference and act like they're gonna, do whatever. But anyway, karma's a bitch. Anyway, this almost should have been our game of the week. With as bad as Utah's done, BYU's biggest game of biggest rivalry of the year at least, if not the biggest game. And BYU's our secondary school on this podcast. We're now, if no one's been following here lately, if you haven't noticed, we're now the Country Roads Webcast / Storm and Mormon podcast.
Yep, it's been a thing.
We have a duality here that we're trying to uphold.
Yeah, so none of us can pick Utah. None of us would want to pick Utah. And can we just talk about that a second before we get to the game of the week? How I believe we sat here on the season prediction roundtable, probably on the first couple around the Big 12 segments, and I believe Steven was one that said that Utah couldn't win the current Pac-12. I believe Bradley and I both said that Utah's fans were crazy, thinking they were going to come in and dominate, that they wouldn't finish in the top 2 of the conference even. And hey, we don't pat ourselves on the back much, but hey, fellas, go ahead, throw you one on your back there, because
with
that's
Utah
something
and
we're
with
all right
Arizona,
about.
Arizona was just as bad. And I picked very early on when I seen how some of these fan bases were acting about joining the conference. You had the tale of two fan bases for both of these rivalries. One with Arizona and Arizona State. Very clear hatred between the two fan bases, and then also the respect that they show to other fan bases. Very clearly, Arizona State fans are the ones that I'm choosing in that side, and then likewise the BYU fans are the ones that I'm choosing on that side, because Utah fans and Arizona fans have been nothing short of a very cocky bunch for virtually no reason at all. West Virginia could have came into the conference when they joined the Big 12 and said that they were going to run the stuff, but I don't think anybody. We were very optimistic about it, but I don't think any of us were very confident in saying that. So
And it never
don't be
works
too
out that way.
cocky. Don't be too cocky before you see the final product on the field, because that's what happens.
That's right. That's right. Like Steven says, that's the karma. What goes around comes around. But just had to mention, I don't know how many people called it, but we weren't picking Utah to win the Big 12 here on the CRW. We were a bit more accurate with that one. For as much stuff as we've been wrong on, we were dead right on that one. So
Very
had
true.
to shout that out. And then of course we're going to wrap up the Week 11 around the Big 12 segment with our game of the week this week, one that's impactful not only for the conference itself, but also for us throughout Mountaineer Nation, as we got 2 other teams right here that are in the thick of the conference race here. Texas Tech, after pulling the big upset win last week. Colorado sitting there near the top of the standings with only 1 conference loss as well. So Texas Tech, 2 conference losses, Colorado 1 conference loss, and they're both trying to remain competitive in this conference here at 4 o'clock on Fox there in Lubbock. The Buffaloes hit the road to take on the Red Raiders. I'll lead this one off because, listen, I'll be the first to tell you guys I've had to eat crow and mention eating crow about Colorado several times this season. They've definitely looked improved. They've definitely impressed, and they've done a good job improving the areas that they really need to improve. Their pass protection, they've decided to run the football a little bit. Their defense even hasn't been playing as bad in recent weeks. They've done a good job on that side. But there's one thing that I can attest to as a WVU fan, and that's that when you first come into this conference and you haven't made a trip to Lubbock yet, that first trip's always going to catch you off guard a little bit, because Lubbock's just
Yep.
such an interesting place and tough place to play. And, the Mountaineers were 5-0 riding high the first time we went in there and got knocked down a peg. And I
It
think that's what's
completely
going to
derailed
happen.
our season going into Lubbock.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this game has that potential to be that type of game for Colorado. And when you look at Colorado, they're a team that's built in a similar way to that WVU team. A lot of star power, a lot of superstars, especially on the offensive side there at the skill positions. And, went into a crazy game in Lubbock with those crazy Texas wins and got handled. And I think that Texas Tech is going to ride their hot streak right now. They're feeling really good about themselves. They're playing at home, and I think they're going to ride that into another win here, and they're going to take down Colorado, and I think they're going to do it by 10 to 12 points at least. I think that it's going to be one of those games similar to what West Virginia had to endure our first year in the Big 12. So give me Texas Tech here in our game of the week this week. Steven, what about you, my friend?
I really want to pick Texas Tech because I want Colorado's season to get derailed. But I'll tell you guys something right now. Travis Hunter is playing on a level of football that I don't think any of us has ever really truly seen in our lifetime, and it's going to be hard pressed to ever be matched again. I I can't find a reason to not pick Colorado in this game. They've played in a lot of games that have been close. They've played in a lot of primetime games this season, for what relatively primetime games I'll call them. I mean, they're obviously not against top level competition, but I don't know. In the games that they've played like this all year long, whenever we've picked them to lose, they've won. So I'm gonna pick Prime and the Buffaloes. Unfortunately.
All right. So a 50-50 split here. Brad, you get to be the decider here in the game of the week. Which way is the CRW as a podcast leaning in the Colorado-Texas Tech matchup here? As I've picked Texas Tech, Stevens picked Colorado. Which side do you come down on here in our game of the week in the week 11 of the conference here?
Yeah, I'm going with the Red Raiders, man. I agree. I think Lubbock's a funky place to play. I think it's something that we need to have happen for us, and I have been pretty wrong on these Big 12 pick'ems. So I'd rather just hope that Texas Tech wins and go with that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sticks with my theme throughout the Round the Big 12 segment this week as well. Texas Tech win would be beneficial for West Virginia because we still have to play Texas Tech. Hope they win every game except for when they play us. Same goes for Cincinnati and, everyone else in the conference not named Iowa State, Kansas State, and Colorado. So definitely agree with you on that one. And then to Steven's point about Travis Hunter, completely agree, having a hell of a season. As college football fans, we've been treated this year to, the two guys that I think are the easy Heisman front runners, Travis Hunter at Colorado and Ashton Jeanty at Boise State, to some really fun football and some really special players to get to watch. But that's it for our Week 11 Around the Big 12 segment, guys, here. Episode 206. We've bookended this thing with some Big 12 talk at the beginning and now at the tail end of this episode. And, of course, our main topic previewed the matchup with Cincinnati as West Virginia comes off the bye week with a new defensive coordinator looking to have a strong close to the season. But having said that, gentlemen, any final thoughts here before we get ready to put a bow on this one and wrap up episode 206? Anything you got there, Brad?
Now, random thought and feeling. I feel like Rodney Gallagher's going to have a breakout game, so I'm just also going to manifest that since we're manifesting here.
Hey, that's right. That's what we're in mood for here on the end of this podcast, is trying to manifest things that we're hoping to see, and I'd like to see that one too. So I'm all for that. I'll second that one. Steven, what about you? Any final thoughts here?
Can only hope that the defensive changes that were made in the bye week are going to be positive moving forward. That's really what I'm mainly paying attention to. Obviously wanting to win the game, but other than that, that's mainly what I'm watching for this weekend.
Yep, absolutely.
And also, shout out to the girls basketball team tonight, starting off the season 16th in the country.
Oh, yeah.
So if any of us fans can be optimistic about anything, it's girls basketball, men's basketball too. But
I was about to say, shout out to the DeVries era, starting off 1-0 this week as well, as they got that big win over Robert Morris, and looks good doing so.
Yeah, started off the game 21-0. That's a great start to the college basketball season and to the DeVries era, like you said.
Yep, indeed. So a lot of fun things on the horizon there. It seems like on the hoop side of thing, and hopefully we have similar things coming our way on the football side as well, starting with this game against Cincinnati. Hopefully it'll be an exciting one to watch that West Virginia finds a way to win. We'll be looking forward to it. And if you guys want to watch it alongside us, we'll be doing the watch along stream again on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel with this being a away game. So be sure to come tune into that with us here. You can watch the game on your TV. We'll have it on our end, do a little commentary and chat with you guys throughout as the game progresses. We've had a lot of fun doing those this season, so I wanted to provide that update for you guys. Other than that, as far as our coverage is concerned, this week will be live later this week, most likely Thursday night, to get your all's predictions now that you've heard ours here on this episode. And we do appreciate you tuning in this episode, whether you tuned in the video version here on YouTube. If you did that, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, give us a like on the video. That helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. And be sure to subscribe here for future Mountaineer football content here on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel. And appreciate WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes on their site as well. You can also listen to the audio-only version on any podcast platform you like. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it. Just search Country Roads Webcast and leave us a rating there if you're listening that way, preferably a 5-star one if you would. We really appreciate it. But having said that, we're looking forward to Mountaineer football's return after a bye week. Get to enjoy at least 4 more games, but hopefully we get a bowl game in there, as well as West Virginia hopefully finds success over these final 4 games and tries to remain competitive in this crazy Big 12 conference that we've covered here in episode 206 as well. But either way, we'll be back to talk about the results in our Cincinnati Review and Reaction podcast releasing early next week. We'll talk to you again on that one, guys. Hopefully it's after a Mountaineer victory. We'll be cheering them on just like all of you guys will. For my co-hosts Steven and Brad, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those